What happens when a small West African nation decides it's had enough of being exploited? In a move that's turning heads across the continent and beyond, Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya, the military leader of Guinea, has shaken the global mining industry by canceling the licenses of 46 companies operating in the country. These firms, many of them foreign-owned, were extracting valuable resources like bauxite, gold, diamonds, and graphite. But according to the government, they were giving little back in return. This surprise decision isn't just about corporate contracts. It's part of a growing pattern across Africa, where military-led governments are taking bold steps to reclaim control over their country's natural wealth. Guinea is now walking a path similar to that of Mali, Niger, and especially Burkina Faso, under the leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Together, they're challenging long-standing economic systems and demanding a new kind of respect on the global stage. The continent is pushing back against a long history of exploitation, especially by Western powers, and is now asserting its right to benefit from its own natural resources. A source from the Guinean government confirmed to Reuters on May 15, 2025, that the affected mining companies had not met their obligations. For years, foreign firms have profited from Guinea's rich natural deposits, especially its vast bauxite reserves, the largest in the world, crucial for aluminum production while most of the local population remained in poverty. While the cancelled licenses mainly affected smaller and less productive companies, the message is clear. Guinea will no longer allow foreign firms to operate freely without real benefit to the nation. A mining expert, speaking anonymously due to the sensitivity of the situation, said these were small players. But the move sends a signal to bigger companies too. This is part of a wider effort to challenge the structures that have allowed outside powers to dominate Africa's resources, often at the expense of local communities. Colonel Doumbouya made it clear in a national broadcast that all companies must stick to their agreements. The country's information minister, Fana Souma, echoed this message, reinforcing the government's firm position. The consequences for foreign businesses are serious if they fail to deliver real value to the country. Guinea's decision is not an isolated one. It's part of a larger shift happening across Africa. From Mali to Niger and Burkina Faso, military-led governments are taking strong steps to break free from economic systems that have favored outsiders for too long. These countries are now demanding full control over their resources and changing how they deal with the rest of the world. The implications are significant. For example, in Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traoré has taken major actions since taking power in 2022. His government stopped the export of raw gold to Europe, took back control of 2 major gold mines, and launched a local gold refinery capable of processing 150 tons of gold each year. These moves aim to help the country earn more from its own minerals, instead of sending them abroad and getting little in return. Traoré has also been outspoken about the need for African leaders to stop following the lead of foreign powers. At the 2023 Russia-Africa Summit, he said African nations must stop behaving like puppets controlled by outsiders. Could Africa finally be breaking free from the chains of its colonial past? That's the question many are asking as bold leaders across the Sahel push back against decades of foreign control over their resources. At the heart of this shift is Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, whose strong anti-imperialist views, shaped by the legacy of revolutionary icon Thomas Sankara, have sparked new energy across the continent. His message is simple but powerful. Africa belongs to Africans. Since coming to power, Traoré has expelled French troops, cut ties with Western-backed groups like ECOWAS, and built new partnerships with countries like Russia and Turkey. His vision of a self-reliant, sovereign Burkina Faso has made waves far beyond its borders, earning him passionate supporters from Nairobi to Kingston. Now, Similar echoes are being heard from Guinea. When Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya stripped 46 mining companies of their licenses, it wasn't just an economic move, it was a statement. Like Traoré, Doumbouya is making it clear that foreign companies will no longer get a free pass. If they don't deliver real value to the people, they won't be welcome. At the core of both leaders' decisions is a shared belief: Africa's wealth should first and foremost benefit Africans. This growing alignment among Sahelian military-led governments signals a deep frustration with how the West has treated the region, and a desire to change the rules of the game entirely. And they're not alone. Mali and Niger are also pushing forward with similar strategies after their own coups in recent years. In Mali, Colonel Assimi Goïta's government has rewritten the mining code and clamped down on international companies. When executives from the Australian mining giant Barrick Gold were accused of breaking tax and production rules in 2023, they were arrested, a clear sign that things had changed. Mali has also nationalized several mining operations, aiming to keep more profits within the country. These efforts are paying off. Mali has tightened control over its gold sector, a major source of export revenue, while neighboring Niger has taken its own bold steps. The military government, led by General Abdourahmane Chiani, revoked licenses from foreign firms, including France's Orano, which ran one of the country's key uranium mines. In July 2023, Niger delivered a serious blow to France by stopping uranium exports, a resource France depends on to power its nuclear energy industry. The government also raised taxes on foreign companies and pushed for greater national involvement in mining. These moves signal a firm commitment to economic independence. Together, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have formed the Alliance of Sahel States, a regional group focused on economic and security cooperation between military-led governments. It was founded in September 2023 as a clear rejection of ECOWAS, which many in the region now see as a tool of Western influence. By leaving ECOWAS and setting their own trade rules, AES countries are laying the groundwork for true self-reliance. Now, Guinea may be preparing to join that bloc, and the timing is no coincidence. The West has long relied on African resources while offering little in return. The continent has been left with underdeveloped economies and rising poverty, even as its raw materials powered the industries of Europe and North America. France, in particular, has held on tightly to its former colonies through systems like the CFA franc, a currency used by 14 African countries that is tied to the euro and gives Paris enormous influence over their economies. Add to that the unfair trade practices where raw goods are bought cheap and finished products are sold back at steep prices, and it's clear why so many African nations are fed up. What we're seeing now, the cancellations, the nationalizations, the withdrawal of foreign troops, is more than just politics. It's a loud and growing rejection of a system that has held Africa back for far too long. And the West is taking notice. France, for example, has been forced to pull its military out of several African countries, including Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and Chad. What happens when a continent known for its resources decides it's done playing by someone else's rules? The growing pushback against Western influence in Africa isn't just about politics, it's personal, and the tension keeps rising. President Emmanuel Macron of France recently stirred outrage across Africa by claiming that African leaders don't show enough gratitude for French help in fighting armed groups. But Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso didn't stay quiet. "If anyone's ungrateful, it's Macron," he said. "Our ancestors helped build France into what it is today. They should be thanking us." It's not just France feeling the heat. The United States is also facing backlash. In April 2025, U.S. General Michael Langley, head of AFRICOM, U.S. Africa Command, accused Traoré of using Burkina Faso's gold to fund his own rule instead of helping the people. The comment, made during a Senate hearing, sparked outrage across Africa and among the global African diaspora, who saw it as a clear case of interference in African affairs. People across the continent and abroad quickly responded, calling out the U.S. for trying to discredit Traoré and block Africa's rising push for economic independence. In South Africa, the Economic Freedom Fighters, EFF, dismissed Langley's claims, calling them a desperate move by the West to cling to power over African resources. Western media joined the chorus, labeling Traoré and other military leaders as dictators. But on the ground, many Africans see something very different: leaders standing up against decades of exploitation. Social media has played a huge role in spreading this message. On platforms like YouTube and TikTok, pro-Traoré content, some even made using AI, paints him as a modern-day savior, a symbol of African pride and resistance. These images and stories have struck a chord with young Africans tired of watching their countries stay poor while foreign companies get rich from local resources. The message is clear: Africa is no longer content to be the world's raw material supplier. Countries like Guinea, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are leading a shift that's starting to shake up the global economy. They're canceling mining contracts, taking back control of key industries, and putting local development first. And that's making the West nervous. Guinea's bauxite is essential to global aluminum production. Niger's uranium powers nuclear plants in Europe. Burkina Faso and Mali hold vast gold reserves. Disruptions in any of these could ripple through global markets. Now that these nations are asserting control over their resources, Western companies are finding themselves on the defensive. Australian mining firm Surama Resources has taken Burkina Faso to court, while other companies in Guinea are being pushed to meet stricter demands. This shift is giving African countries more leverage in global negotiations and more respect. For too long, Africa was treated as a continent full of problems. But now, that story is changing. Leaders like Traoré and Doumbouya are backed by millions who see them as defenders of African dignity. Support for them has spread far beyond their country's borders, with rallies popping up in places like Accra, London, and Jamaica's Montego Bay. Traoré's anti-colonial message has inspired many in the Black diaspora, especially in the UK and the US, where people see him as someone standing up against the legacies of slavery and foreign domination. One protester in Ouagadougou put it bluntly: "They lied about Iraq. They lied about Gaddafi. We're not falling for it again." Africa is no longer just a supplier of cheap resources, and the West is being forced to face this new reality. French troops have been kicked out of several countries. Organizations seen as puppets of Western interests, like ECOWAS, are being rejected. Instead, African nations are forming new alliances with each other and with non-Western powers like Russia and Turkey. This new unity, especially among Sahelian nations, is built on shared goals: protect sovereignty, grow local economies, and stop being dependent on foreign powers. Guinea's alignment with this movement suggests more countries may follow, and that could reshape the entire continent. Armed groups continue to create chaos across the Sahel, and Burkina Faso remains one of the hardest-hit countries. Nearly 40% of its territory is now under the control of militants. Despite the efforts of Captain Ibrahim Traoré's government, the violence hasn't stopped. In fact, the number of people killed in attacks nearly doubled from 3,862 in 2022 to 6,389 in 2024. And it's not just Burkina Faso. Guinea, Mali, and Niger all face similar risks that could make it harder to fully reclaim control over their own natural resources. Nationalizing industries, while empowering, also brings its own set of challenges. Across Africa, state-run businesses have sometimes been plagued by corruption and poor management. For countries like Guinea and Burkina Faso to truly benefit from these moves, leaders like Colonel Doumbouya and Captain Traoré must focus on transparency, building strong institutions, and involving the people in governance. The task is big, but so is the opportunity. By keeping more of their natural wealth within their borders, these nations can finally tackle the deep poverty that has fueled instability for generations. Investment in education, health, roads, and energy can open the door to long-term growth. Imagine the impact of gold refineries in Mali and Burkina Faso that process their own minerals, creating jobs and boosting local businesses. Guinea could rise as a major player in the global aluminum industry by processing its bauxite at home instead of exporting it raw. If Guinea joins the Sahel alliance alongside Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, it could lead to stronger regional unity. Working together, these countries could reduce their dependence on Western markets and instead build economic partnerships based on mutual benefit. The decision to cancel 46 mining licenses in Guinea wasn't just about enforcing the law, it was a bold statement of independence. Colonel Doumbouya, like Captain Traoré, is challenging the idea that Africa's resources should only benefit outsiders. With Mali and Niger also stepping up, it's becoming clear that a new movement is taking shape in the Sahel, one that's reshaping Africa's future. For the first time in a long time, Western powers are being forced to respond, not dictate. Africa is no longer waiting for permission. Inspired by the spirit of revolutionary thinkers like Thomas Sankara, Patrice Lumumba, and Marcus Garvey, a new wave of leaders is rising from Conakry and Ouagadougou to Bamako and Niamey. They aren't perfect, but they are driven by a powerful vision. An Africa that is self-reliant, respected, and in control of its own destiny. The world is watching, and many in the West are rattled. But instead of treating these leaders as threats, it's time to recognize them as partners in building a stronger, more just Africa. That means holding them accountable? Yes, but also supporting their efforts to build systems that truly serve their people. Africa doesn't need to apologize. It doesn't need to ask for favors. The time has come for the world to respect Africa not out of charity, but because the continent is rising and wide awake. As the sun rises over the Sahel, a new future is taking shape, one where Africa speaks with one voice and takes its place as a powerful force in global affairs. The bold steps taken by General Abdourahmane Chiani in Niger, Colonel Assimi Goïta in Mali, Captain Ibrahim Traoré in Burkina Faso, and Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya in Guinea signal something far greater than local politics. They are laying the foundation for a united Africa, one that no longer begs for recognition, but demands it on its own terms. If these nations can unite, harness their own wealth, and break free from the old mindset of dependence, Africa will not only stand tall, it will shine as a global symbol of pride, strength, and opportunity. Picture an Africa where leaders from Cape Town to Cairo, Lagos to Addis Ababa come together with one shared goal. A continent that holds nearly a third of the world's mineral wealth: cobalt in Congo, uranium in Niger, gold in Mali, and Burkina Faso, bauxite in Guinea, and rare earth elements scattered across the land. These aren't just rocks in the ground. They power electric cars, smartphones, planes, and even nuclear energy. If African nations worked as one under a common economic system, they wouldn't have to settle for selling raw materials anymore. Instead of shipping out minerals and buying back expensive finished products, they could build their own refineries, factories, and tech companies. Millions of jobs could be created, and more of the money would stay in Africa, benefiting local people, not foreign companies. This kind of unity would end the era of dependency. For decades, African governments have had to ask for help from Western countries, even as those same countries profit off Africa's natural wealth. But when African leaders treat their resources as assets to negotiate with, not giveaways, that power dynamic shifts. Suddenly, it's Western countries that would be knocking on African doors. The same nations that once took standing in line in Bamako or Conakry, hoping for access to the resources they can't do without. With one united voice, Africa could demand fair trade, real partnerships, and technology sharing. No more lopsided deals that benefit foreign boardrooms while local communities are left behind. The world wouldn't come offering charity, they'd come because Africa has what they need. And that's just the beginning. With a population set to reach 2.5 billion by 2050, a strong, united African economy could rival giants like the US or China. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, is already a step in this direction. If fully realized, it could become the world's largest single market, encouraging trade between African countries and reducing reliance on imports from the West. Imagine goods and ideas flowing freely from Djibouti to Dakar, Nairobi to Accra, on high-speed trains and through bustling ports in Durban and Lagos. With smart investment in infrastructure and regional cooperation, Africa could become the new hub of global trade and innovation. A strong, unified Africa wouldn't be seen as a problem to fix, but as a global power, equal at the negotiating table. International leaders would look to Africa not just for resources, but for collaboration, creativity, and leadership. Cities like Kigali could rival Singapore as tech capitals. Lagos could outshine Los Angeles with its booming creative industry. With better education and more opportunities, young Africans would rise to lead breakthroughs in AI, space technology, and clean energy. And from every corner of the world, people of African descent would return home bringing their skills, money, and ideas to a continent that's finally stepping into its own power. Africa would become a source of inspiration for the world. Instead of heading to Silicon Valley, young innovators might look to Africa for bold ideas and fresh energy. But making this dream real takes courage. African leaders must overcome old divisions, whether based on language, history, or ethnicity, and build a shared identity inspired by visionaries like Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, and Thomas Sankara. They must trust in the value of what lies beneath their soil and reject the trap of foreign loans and short-term aid. To succeed, Africa also needs honest leadership. Corruption must be rooted out to earn the trust of the people and make sure progress progress. The alliance between Sahel countries is a start, but unity must grow to include East, Central, and Southern Africa. A true continental bloc can only succeed if the whole of Africa moves forward together. The world is watching. If Africa stands tall and protects what's rightfully hers, global powers will have no choice but to change how they deal with the continent. No more conditions from the IMF. No more military bases deciding policy, just equal partnerships based on mutual respect. A new era is possible. Africa just has to believe in its strength and act on it. Do you think Africa is finally changing direction? And if you'd like to see more content like this, tap the bell icon and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.